There are guys out there selling those kind of services to companies that are desperate for more customers, and they're willing to part with really precious cash. And it breaks my heart, and I want your mum to be proud of what you do and how you do it. And that's how I'm going to change the way the world perceives sales. I want you to lower your guard, Matt, and I want you to be unsuspecting, because then I'm going to come in and I'm going to get you. That's old school sales. First question is, do we know them? And can we get to know them? And if we can't, why should we even bother? Objection handled you to death. And there's a Scottish expression, there's many a meeko make a muckle. They're not spending what little money they have wisely. And they're being lured in by shiny, pretty things.
Welcome to the Leading Boldly podcast. Joining Jenny and I on today's episode is a very special guest. Campbell McLean is a ginger-bearded beast of a Scotsman, interim sales director and trainer at SalesGeek. He runs SalesGeek Midlands, and he's known for selling £7 million worth of toilet cleaner. Campbell is passionate about rewriting the story around sales and salespeople, and through his monthly SalesGeek Sales Club, trains business owners in the art of modern selling and eating pizza. We're delighted to have Campbell on the show to share his story and wisdom. Campbell, welcome to the Leading Boldly podcast.
Thank you very much, Matt. And it's lovely to see you as well, Jenny. And thank you for having me today on the podcast.
It's great to have you. Now, we met at a networking event and you're quite visible. You've got your look, your SalesGeek look, and we just got on really well. And then you came along to our launch party, and since then we spent quite a bit of time with yourself. So we're really excited to have you here. And I know that we may struggle to get a word in, but that'll be good. That'll be okay. So the first question I've got for you, Campbell, is what motivated you to become a sales geek in the first place? And how has your journey been so far?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'm going to parenthesize it with, I was asked another question, which I think answers your question, and it was an application on a tender, and it was kind of one of these tie-break questions, and the question was, tell me something that you're proud of, and I struggled with that for a little bit, but then once I'd given it a bit of time, the answer that I came up with was, the thing that I'm most proud of, obviously, except for having a wonderful wife and a supportive family and all that stuff that comes with the personal life, but on a business perspective, is the transformation in where I was to where I am today and to where I want to go tomorrow. And looking at what makes me a sales geek or a geek is probably, if I go back to my early years in my mid-20s, was really for myself discovering a passion for learning and taking it not to an obsessive level, but probably to quite a comfortable geeky level of interest. And that I've with the ability to look back over 20 something years worth of a career history now, I can really start to identify actually the passion for learning, the passion for looking at how things work and the mechanics of connections and the influence of opportunity and all those things that go into good sales and marketing processes, which I've spent most of my professional career working in. Actually, that curiosity is what I think defines me as a geek. Is just always challenging the status quo, always looking at, is there a better way? Not necessarily just a new shiny gimmick, but actually something that can help us advance and move forward. And I think, I'm sorry, you did say you're going to get a word in edgeways. I think it's very much about what makes me feel like I came home when I joined SalesGeek, because it wasn't that I was out in the wilderness, but it definitely felt that I had found a company and an organization and a group of people that had a one common goal, and that goal was, or that commonality was, geekness. And we're all very different, no two sales directors at SalesGeek are the same, that's for sure, but we all have one thing in common, more or less, and that is that when you get to know us, you discover that we're all passionate geeks, and we're geeks about sales.
Well, just to clarify, we loved the fact you were going to make our job easy today. So that was not a problem or a criticism.
No, not at all. The salesman in me, Jenny, goes, you got to be quiet and ask questions. You got to learn. You got to look at the insight and the discovery. So I don't, as much as I am comfortable talking, I don't want to talk. I want to listen.
Well, that's our job today.
Yeah, today we're flipping the script. We need you to talk today.
What was it like as a child? Like I sort of have this image in my head of Campbell the kid. What were you like as a child?
I think the best way to describe, or one of, I don't quite have this as a memory, but I have this as this is what you used to do, Campbell, from an observer, brother and parent perspective, is go to Panto. And I would be deeply embarrassed, and I would be ashamed of the whole, oh, my mum and my brother and my dad, they're embarrassing me. And it's like, oh, please just be quiet. And then 3 or 4 chocolates later, I was in the middle of the aisles and I was screaming and shouting. And I think for me, as looking back on my early years, that pretty much, today that would be a healthy dose of probably hyperactivity and ADHD and all those type of things that we now will define and look at. But actually back then, I thrived on E numbers, and they opened up a world for me where I could fully enjoy a pantomime, or get into a bit of mischief and trouble, and have an interesting experience with my my school days and whatnot. But I think I think that's probably a good way of describing me as a kid. It was somebody who, once I got going, could really suck the marrow out of the situation and get the best out of what was going on.
We hear a lot of stories in the press and media, in the sort of business and entrepreneurial circles, about entrepreneurs and salespeople knowing right from the beginning they had a knack for sales and selling stuff to other kids in the playground, sweets for pocket money and all this stuff. Did you ever feel that? Was sales always there, or was that something that came later?
No, I think it from maybe not even from a sales perspective, but definitely from a giver's gain and from a trading perspective. So I have the fortune of I attended 7 different schools through primary and secondary due to having a rather colourful educational special needs, just needs, and that gave me the ability to find myself in environments where I had a tuck box and I had things that nobody else had, and they had things that I didn't have. And actually working a barter system and working, even getting down with playing things like marbles. And I remember that from I got my mom's birthday present because I managed to level up my collection of marbles to then go and get almost like an orb-sized dome of glass. But that took a term of playing and building and playing and building and playing and risking and effectively wagering what I was doing against outcomes. Maybe not so much in a clinical kind of sales environment, but definitely from a risk perspective, that entrepreneurial spirit of looking at, if I have limited resources, but I've got something. How do I then change that into something else? And I think that was very much part of my formative years, and also at some of the schools that I went to, I was able to get sent more stuff, because once I got into that, then it was like, yeah, Mom, can you please? So my requests started changing, because it's a bit like that bit in The Apprentice where they talk about, if you smell what's selling, then that's what you've got to go after, and that's what you've got to chase. And it's like, what's trending, and actually finding things that in the playground became popular that I could have and nobody else could, then gave me an edge that then allowed me to have a better experience, I guess, from what we had. So yeah, it goes back to those formative years, and really probably at that point falling in love with the deal, not necessarily the close, but actually the whole process of doing something that meant that people around you were happy to do business and happy to do the exchange, and they got something from it and I got something from it, and actually that whole ecosystem, and as I say, just it's highly competitive to be a participant but not necessarily so much that it's all about the win, but it's actually about being actively competitive and being a participant, I think is something that I look back on now and kind of that helps me make some sense of how I've then gone and matured as in business and also in life, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting, fascinating kind of reflection there. But sales often comes across as icky, Campbell, and you're on a mission to change this. So what are you going to do to change that kind of, it's salesman thought process that people go through?
Okay, so this is just an hour, so we'll keep it concise, because that in itself is probably a week's worth of lectures. I think when you get into the minutiae of what is it to want to change the way the world perceives sales. And that's really the tip of the spear when it comes to SalesGeek, and everything that we do and everything that I do resonates with that mission. I think one of the things for me in every job, and it doesn't matter if I'm working in cleaning and hygiene or working in med tech or now working in fractional sales, I always typically have a moment in the first 12 to 18 months where I discover the one person that I'm working for, and that then will give me that internal drive and momentum to then eat the frog, to do the hard yards. But actually, this is my interpretation of what it is to change the way the world perceives sales. So I'd started a contract with a company which specializes in nutrition and well-being. They make supplements and capsules. They have a customer service team and a small field sales team. And in the first session, I wanted them all to share with me their elevator pitch. And they nervously started going around and giving me a 60-second overview of who they are and what they did. And then it came time for the sales executive to give his elevator pitch. And the first thing he did was he fidgeted a little bit, and then he turned around and went, "I'm not really comfortable talking about myself as a salesman. In fact, my mum doesn't like the fact that I'm a salesman." And I was like, okay, whoa, wait a second. I stopped him and I said, "There's a little notebook in front of you, a little black jotter. And we give them to every delegate that comes on one of our courses. Said, open it up and read the first thing on page 1. And he opened it up, and it's got our values, and then above our values, it's got this statement which says, changing the way the world perceives sales. And I looked across and I said, and this chap's name is Chris, and I said, "Chris, today my mission is to change the way that your mum perceives you. And I want your mum to be proud of what you do and how you do it. And that's how I'm going to change the way the world perceives sales today. And I'm going to do it with one person, and that one person is you." And I think for too long we've seen manipulative sales tactics, which, and you look at there's definitely a psychology that you can use to get people to do things. It's, advertisers use it a lot to encourage us to pick one particular brand over another. When you get into the sales process, I can do the same thing as far as conversation and as far as uncertainty. And it's really interesting because sales 101, it's all about getting the prospect or the mark to lower their guard. And I see this a lot, even today on some reels. I'll see sales trainers talking about lowering the guard. And I back in old school sales, we used to train about the shutters on a window and bringing the shutters down and opening up the prospect. And when I look at the SalesGeek approach and look at the way that I want to reimagine that, it's not actually about lowering the guard, it's about building trust. And it's about coming in and going, how much do I know about you, and how much do you know about me, and how much do I like you, and how much do you like me, and how much do you trust me, and how much do I trust you? And working on that know, like, and trust, I'm building confidence up. I'm not bringing the shutters down. Because when you turn around and go, I want you to lower your guard, Matt, and I want you to be unsuspecting, because then I'm going to come in and I'm going to get you. That's old school sales. It's all about the slick clothes, and it's all about the manipulative position to get you to a point where you can go, well, why don't you sign? It's like I've objection handled you to death. And it's like, but I live 2 stories up and I don't need a conservatory. But that doesn't matter. You need to sign today because I've got my boss on the phone. That's the world that we're reimagining. And we're turning around and going, it's about creating positive, value-driven experiences and feelings within, and it might be that actually I've got the greatest product, but I've missold it in a way where you don't really feel the value in that. And that's as I say, from I think from an umbrella view or an overview of what it is. That's very much it's repositioning. And also this is the reason why this is very difficult to do in an hour, because when you look at the buyer profile, you look at the market, you look at the information exchange. In Sales 101, it was buyer beware. In Sales 2.0, it's seller beware, because our buyers and our customers are far more educated, they have far more information, they can be geeks about what they're buying and be far more invested in. And if you were interested in, say, buying an EV vehicle, and you're passionate about it, the chances are, maybe not so much now because the car salesmen are catching up, but definitely in the last 2 to 3 years, if you're interested, you'll know more than any salesman in a car showroom about an EV vehicle and about particular brands. And actually, it's then about understanding how to be confident in that situation, because as a buyer comes in, the salesperson can feel, they have to show their worth. Therefore, they try and level up rather than actually really taking on the position of being a shepherd and a steward and guiding the consumer or the buyer to a point where they really have confidence in the person and in the process. And actually, when we get right down to that bit, it's very much about people, and no longer just about, is this the cheapest or is it the best, but it's about, how do I connect with you, Jenny? How do I connect with you, Matt? And then how do we form that relationship? And when you get that right, people are willing to, the value then just grows exponentially. So yeah, I think that's for me the kind of the for me, it's all summed up with, how do I build trust rather than bring your guard down? And if you hear people talking about bringing your guard down, I kind of always feel a bit icky when I hear that, because that makes me think very much old school. And I'm all about trust and confidence, and that's built up through having good collateral around you. Have you got a brand that speaks integrity? Have you got material? Have you got social proof? Have you got? Because now your consumer is going to go out there, and I had a conversation a couple of years ago with somebody, and he turned around and said, "I'll Google you and I'll come back." And I was like, good luck with that.
Yeah,
because I don't know what you're going to find if you Google me.
Yeah.
And it is also about knowing who you're selling to, which is what you said there, because if you can be the best salesperson in the world, but if you don't know your audience, I mean, Matt's got a brilliant story about the very conservatory thing, haven't you, where somebody... Yeah,
absolutely. I kept a cold call salesperson on the phone for about an hour and a half, gleefully selling me a conservatory when I lived in London on the 3rd floor.
Yep.
He was quite disappointed when he found out that I lived on the 3rd floor, but he left it to an hour and a half into the conversation to discover that.
Yep.
Matt obviously had a lot more time on his hands in those days.
I did.
Yeah. It was that's really interesting, because I know it's a number when you're doing cold calling, it's a numbers game. But imagine if that person had spent 25, 30, 40 minutes effectively sharpening their axe and just checking on Google Earth what that address was and who that was. And also, if I was looking at selling conservatories, are there any conservatories next door to you? Therefore, I can use the Joneses as a reason, or I can use this, or I can go, well, if it's not good for you, maybe next door would be interested, because would they be? But that little bit of information, which is easy to get hold of, especially if you're looking at flats, and it's like, it just takes a moment to care and to be. We talk about prospecting with insight, and that's a really good example of where you could spend. It takes that's opportunity. It's wearing overalls and looks like hard work, but in knowing that, I wouldn't have made the call, or I would have made the call and not had the same experience and wasted my time, because guess what? I'd have qualified you to make sure you're on the ground floor and not four floors up.
And had a garden.
And had a garden, yeah, absolutely. Or ask the question, I appreciate this might not be right for you, but do you know anybody that this would be right for? Because actually it's a really cool product. and then it's like, yeah, that's somewhere you can then pass that on to. So it's I had a cold call from a logistics company, and they qualified me that I was a decision maker within SalesGeek. They qualified the business, and that I was the right person to speak to. So, so far so good as far as getting to speak to somebody who can make a decision. And then they deviated a little bit, because they talked about a previous order that we had used their services for. We're a new business, so it's like, I know who we have used. We haven't had to use any shipping companies within what we do, and that didn't go very far, because it was turned around and went, "Oh, sorry, all our products are now virtual, therefore we ship everything online." Okay, but what he didn't do was then ask the question, SalesGeek, what's it all about? What do you do? Because then I could have turned around and went, I'm currently a fractional sales director for 5 companies, 3 of which regularly use pallet services. And even though I'm not in charge of logistics and transportation, if you can save us money and make our process more efficient, those are 2 things that we're always interested in looking at. Therefore, you missed the opportunity by asking the simple question, and just being curious it's, as I say, from a one of my pet hates is a no is just one part of it. You have to move past that no, but not be pushy, because I say, come on, Matt, you really do need to build a big foundation so you can have this conservatory, because it will set you apart. But actually, you never know that your parents, your best friends, or somebody in your network may actually really require having the products and services of somebody who, again, you like, and you trust. So once you've got those 3 things, you then become an advocate, and that's truly powerful when that happens.
That is such a top tip for the listeners. It just, like, it might not be a yes from that person, but it could be a yes from lots of other people. So stay curious, stay asking the questions. Don't just shut down, because that's what happens. I think when we get rejected, we just go, right, okay. Have you ever read the book Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang? So he goes a lot to do 100 days of rejection. So he has to ask people across 100 days to do things that they're going to say no to. And on the first day, he's walking out of his building, and he's like, got to ask this question. And there's a security guard, and he's like, can you give me £50? And the security guard was like, no. He's like, right, okay. And he walks off, and he videoed it, and he looked at it back, and he went, why didn't I ask him why he didn't, or what he could, and he just got so fearful that he left. And then he went back the next day, and he said to the security guard, just out of interest, like, when I came and asked you that question, what was going on in your head? Like, like, well, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you wanted it for. I didn't know. And across the 100 days, he asked more and more outlandish stuff, to the point where people started saying yes to stuff that he was just like, what would you say? He knocked on this guy's door and was like, can I come and play football in your back garden for a bit? And the guy was, yeah. It's like, really? And across the 100 days, he learned about this rejection. It's brilliant.
Something that we talk a lot with our clients about, which I'm really getting from you today, Campbell, is that in all aspects of your business, it doesn't matter what you want to achieve, you're going to have to achieve it through a human. It's a human or a person who's going to buy from you, who's going to work with you, who's going to sell to you, who's going to invest in your business. So we really actually need to be investing more time in building relationships with people, right? Not trying to fleece people, actually just spending the time to build the relationship.
It's a curiosity of mine at the moment, where you turn around and somebody will turn around to you and go, no, Matt, you don't understand. It's just business. It's not personal, and this is why we're doing this. And then you go, yeah, but it's about the heart of any organization, and even not the heart, but the bits that make an organization are the people that either are in it, or the people that it serves, or the people that it's serving. But at some point, now AI may change that altogether, but that's a different podcast, a different discussion point. But ultimately, the adage is people buy people, and nothing happens in this world unless there's a sales involved or a sales transaction involved. And that's no different from getting my 11-year-old to make her bed. And it's about getting her to do something that she may or may not want to do, but actually framing it in a way where she gets the value from it of actually first task in the morning completed. And when you come home at night, what have you got to go to? A freshly made bed. So there's a big upside, but you had to do something to get that upside. And working that through. But yeah, it's that we look a lot at the psychology of what it is in the buying process and getting a decision. And sometimes those decisions can be quite big, and those decisions can be based around tenders, and actually there's a framework, and you've got to hit all the markers, and you've got to be saying the right thing in the right way to be compliant with the criteria of the tender. That doesn't feel like it's a very much a people business, but ultimately all tenders are on the confidence of the team that you're about to engage with. And if you haven't built up that confidence, and again, that's part of that know, like, trust, then you won't be successful. Now, you might not be the biggest, or you might be the most expensive, but actually, if I'm tendering for a project, or I'm putting something together, if it is a tire kicking exercise, I'm not going to engage, because you know what I need to do? I need to understand who the people are, what's involved. And if I've had a request for tender come into the office, the first question is, do we know them? And can we get to know them? And if we can't, why should we even bother? Because if I don't know who they are and I don't know what makes them tick, then how can I then produce a training package or a solution or a widget that's going to meet their expectations and requirements? And yeah, I think the resonance is very much there. It's you look at brand, and it talks of something to someone, because you've got to get somebody engaged to do something, and it's the same from a sales perspective. It's about getting that personal insight, engagement, and then once you've got it, actually that's if you do it correctly, you create advocacy, and then advocacy then goes on, and it's a far more powerful opportunity when you've got your fans telling you about products and services, rather than you having to do when you've created that platform in that voice.
Yeah, absolutely, because we're not lone beasts, are we? We're tribal by nature. So as soon as we create that advocacy, that takes sales to a whole nother level.
Yeah. Just to go back to one thing that you said a minute ago, Jenny. One of the things that, and again, we do a lot of funnel management, and we do a lot of pipelines. So you got pipeline, drops into your funnel, process for your stages of the client's journey. When I take people out the funnel, we don't just ever forget about them. We then sit them in another funnel, and that funnel might be recharge. So at some point, I might just want to put them back in the top of a funnel and go, I appreciate the last time we talked about it, it wasn't good for you. Therefore, is there a situation that I can then explore with you? Or is this now a better time? Or is there somebody else, And actually, it's all about keeping those know, like, and trust, and those touch points working. But yeah, the recharging of funnels is such a simple thing to do. I had engaged with a brand company, not a brand company, those people who make pennants and flags, and a print company, and they'd done a couple of posters for us for a charity campaign that I was involved with, and then 12 months later, I got an email from them, and it was the quote that they'd given me last year, the artwork they'd given me last year, and a really friendly little email to go, appreciate you did some work with students 12 months ago. I know this term is starting up in 6 or 7 weeks' time. Are you interested in rerunning any of the things that you did last year? And how did you get on last year? And all of a sudden, they've just put themselves at the top of my inbox. And at the right time, when if we were about to re-engage, they are now right in the sweet spot for consideration to either get the contract or to re-establish themselves as a contender for it. A really simple process, but that takes a bit of time, takes a bit of thought, and takes a bit of management. But here I am talking about them, and if anybody's interested in knowing who that company is, I'll go and dig out their details, because that one little email Well, I'm dining out on it because I think it's a great example of recharging your funnel.
We definitely do want to know who the company is. We'll put them in the show notes.
I will make sure I find that for you.
Excellent. You've used a phrase a couple of times, and I'd just like you to do a bit of vocab explaining for our listeners and watchers. Fractional salesperson, fractional sales director. What does that mean? What does it involve?
I would typically start off by going, have you heard of a fractional CFO? And most people go, oh yeah, the fractional CFO, that's the guy that comes in and sorts out all the numbers. From an accounts perspective and from a finance, I do exactly the same from a part-time sales director, sales manager position. And we as a company, SalesGeek really is passionate about working with the SME business community. And we as part of the broader mission, when Richard Few, the founder of SalesGeek, first started, it was really about trying to empower the small company, the little guy who was wearing multiple hats and didn't have a sales enablement department and didn't have a big sales machine. And a lot of us in SalesGeek from corporate backgrounds where we've had, every year I was put on development courses, I was put through internal courses, I was given mentorship, I was given accountability. And when you're working with a company with, say, less than 5 employees or turning over less than 2 million, you might be very busy being productive and successful, but you haven't got any time to start developing those frameworks. And actually, when you look at the insights of what a sales director can do for those organizations, we kind of we come in and help lay track. So to start off with, it's about laying pipe to get your pipeline going. But actually, once we're in the company, it's about where are they going, how are they going to get there, and how do we empower them to generate more revenue. And that might be, I might translate that to more customers, more sales, more goods out the warehouse, whatever that means for the particular client. But ultimately, as a company, one of our strap lines is more sales delivered, and that's what I do as a part-time sales director. And typically, we work with any size of organization, from half a day a month to about a day a week, and we build out frameworks. And I think, Matt, one of the things that where I see my position within an organization, it's at that bit before the S curve on the hockey stick kicks up. And as it gets to the kick up position, we then get that trajectory running. And then once it's up and running, we should have empowered the team enough to then be able to manage that and develop that themselves. And I guess it's a bit like good therapy. Good therapy gets you from 1 to 2 to 3. And once you've got to that part, you can get to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 and to 10.
Yeah.
And then once you get to 10, then you turn around and go, okay, now we're doing 5 million. How do we get to 15? And that's where I come back in on the next part of that triple S curve. And then we work on, right, now we look at 11, 12, and 13, and we spend time for the next 6 to 12 to 18 months with the company to get them to that next part of elevation in their process. So it's that's what it is to be a fractional time sales director.
Yeah,
I think.
That makes complete sense, because it's a very similar model to how we work with businesses on brand building. You're here, you want to get to here. Okay, we can help you get to there. We'll take you to that level, and then it's up to you. Off you go, and we'll come back in when you want to get to the next level.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely.
You've worked in sales departments as a salesperson for a long time, and you've got massive experience. So what made you choose SalesGeek specifically and that sort of franchise model?
I had left an organization where I'd spent two and a bit years as the primary manager, leader, boss of the business, and I was very much by myself. I did have a team around me. I had an owner, I had a chair, we had a non-exec who was really helpful, and then I had a management team. But I found myself in a position pretty much 4:30 every day where I couldn't talk up and I couldn't talk down, I couldn't talk left or right, and I had nobody to speak to about the day-to-day struggles of running an SME. We had 52 people working in the organization. We were turning over just over 3 million, and it was a busy little company, lots of moving parts. And I just needed somebody I could lean on for help, insight, and support, and some wisdom. And I came out of that role after spending quite a lot of time transforming the business. And then I thought to myself, I want to be that guy. I want to be the wingman for people just like my experience. And I went to a networking event in Manchester, and it was one of my old professional networking events within the facilities management sector. And I got speaking to a guy, and his name's Larry. And I said to Larry, this is what I wanted to do. And I'd met Larry 3 or 4 times. He turned around and went, dude, that sounds like SalesGeek. And you're a geek, so you should really go and speak to SalesGeek. And it's a bit like the obvious, and you don't want to do the obvious. The algorithm, and I'd showed SalesGeek to me before, and I'd seen them, and I hadn't wanted to engage because it's the obvious. We went along and discovered that, as I said at the beginning, it was a little bit like coming home. That actually this was very much somewhere I'd be very comfortable and part of the tribe. The franchise model is really interesting because it's the best of times and the worst of times in a franchise. The benefits are I didn't have to climb the stairs. I could push a button, get into a lift, and go up to the 15th floor. So I had infrastructure, I had support, I had all the things that you need around you as a business that actually a good franchise puts in place. Training, development, a bit of mentorship, and structure on a website and a brand and then they turned around. I think what makes SalesGeek different to some other service provider franchises that are out there, we don't have a playbook. What we do is we have a selection process that says you are a geek, therefore you can come and do this. And not everybody that applies to SalesGeek gets through. It's not an exam or a test or anything. It just is, are you a geek or are you not? Do you buy the values of the business, and can you work in this space? And for me, there was a lot of benefits, especially I think it's that ADHD part of me and that neurodiverse part that was the kid that was screaming and shouting in the aisles. Hasn't necessarily got the discipline to. I'm really focused and I can build websites and I've done it, but that's not what I like. It's not what I do. It's like I'll be fascinated until I've achieved it, and then I kind of move on and do the next thing. Actually, what I really what's in my wheelhouse is the elements of being a really successful sales director, mentor, and somebody who's empowering companies to help cross the finish line, get to that goal, get to 3 years. If they're in that, we're about to launch our second album and we don't quite know how it's going to go, I want to get in there and work with them to really help them get through to to the 3-year mark or the 5-year mark, or go from 5 million to 10, whatever the boundary to their success is. I've got the insights, know-how, and sledgehammer to break that ceiling and get them through. And I guess that's the bit which is the different, maybe for me, is very much part of the difference of what is maybe a typical franchise professional services model compared to SalesGeek. We have a lot of autonomy and a lot of freedom to be ourselves and just get on and do what I very much like and love doing with clients, with a company behind me that's there for me when I'm down and there for me when I'm up. So it's I think that's probably a fair analogy of my experience with the franchise network within SalesGeek.
So you've mentioned a couple of qualities of a good leader, and one of them is being a geek can be a great attribute to being a good leader, but also the curiosity. What other attributes and qualities would you say are necessary for being a great leader, particularly in the sales sort of space? So part of why I went to 7 different schools was because I am dyslexic,
And dyslexia is a bit like eyesight. If for me dyslexia was vision, I would be completely visually impaired, and I have 2 guide dogs because I can't see at all, as far as reading and writing is concerned. Now, what did that mean? Well, it meant that for good 15 years, every day I went to a place where I didn't necessarily fit in, and I had to find a way through the problems and challenges of consistently having to problem solve and having to get somebody beside me to open up textbooks and information and ensure that when I eventually became a mature student and went to university, it was very important for me that every lecturer knew that I was a person and not just a matriculation number. And that if I was going to require not additional help, but just additional formatting. So if it was a PDF or if it was a printout, can I get that in a format that I can access? And I'll do all the work to unpack, how I get the text out, but I can't do it with a dodgy photocopy of a photocopy. I need the original Word doc, and I need them to do that for me. So how are they going to do it? Well, they're going to do it because I'm going to firstly make myself valuable to them. I'm going to make myself apparent to them, and I'm going to make myself self-present. And I'm also going to be inquisitive and interested in who they are, because ultimately nobody cares about you until you're in a relationship. So it's about doing that piece of understanding, how do I get somebody to do something for me? And I spent a good 15 years at school, and then another 4 years when I went to university, honing that skill of being able to problem solve everything, because everything, when you can't read and write, and the only medium they use at school is reading and writing. And how do I find advocates? How do I find somebody who will put up with me long enough to help me write my thesis at university, or help me unlock this, or come with me into a lecture theatre and help me teach them, because monkey see, monkey do. I did a lot of up the front stuff with tutor groups, where I gave them insights, but they gave me time to master the information and the knowledge, and they also held me to account. So they would turn around and go, "No, I don't think that's right," and then I'd have to really be able to justify it. And that, I think, for me, has that just all those experiences all lead into natural entrepreneurship and business leadership, and the insight on, there's a Scottish expression, there's many a meeko make a muckle, and Confucius's version of it is, only when those around you are completely different will you feel at home. And we're all different, and we all have different motivators, and we all have different triggers, and we all have different ways of engagement. And part of my education experience, the upside, the downside was it was horrible, and it was rough, and it was all the things it is to be a square peg in a round hole. But actually, that's common for most kids. It doesn't matter if it's dyslexia or if it's something else. There's very few of us that have a perfect educational experience. But mine gave me this great insight into how to engage with people, and how to make people connect with me, and how to help processes and systems, and ultimately get stuff done. Because if we're trying to do something, it's trying to you see on LinkedIn all the time those little cartoons of a leader and a boss, and somebody pushing people, and somebody. The idea of leading up front is great, but actually there's a real blend, because great leaders need great followers, and great followers are people who believe and engage. And that for me is a really, it was an interesting lesson, because I inspired to be a manager and a leader of a company where people would just, come with me, let's go. And I did all the right stuff, and then discovered that they were all staying at home and not actually coming, because they weren't great followers. And then I had to figure out how to make great followers, and it's part of that I guess that advocacy maybe. But yeah, I think for me, my way of looking back of some of those experiences, which formed me, have given me skills and have given me natural abilities, which now allow me to, when I'm not speaking or like as much as I'm doing at the moment, but actually listen with insight, look at what their needs are, and look at what's going on behind the conversation, especially when you're working with people in an organization that you've got responsibility for, because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming when people that you don't normally have this level of transparency with will come and talk to you about things, but they're not talking to Campbell, they're talking to the managing director, or they're talking to the sales director, or they're talking to the position. And it goes back to what we're talking about a bit earlier, the people versus business piece, because actually at that point I'm no longer Campbell, but I'm the boss, and I need to know this so I can manage the technicalities of being then supportive to help somebody in a particular situation. And yeah, I think for me, I was really blessed with a torrid educational experience, because it's given me a resilience and a skill set which now helps me be successful, which I wouldn't say you could teach it, you had to live it, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you see? So if we imagine a small to medium business owner who hasn't reached the level where they can afford to bring you in, what would you say of that sort of space you're seeing people are making the biggest mistakes with in terms of their sales?
They're not spending what little money they have wisely, and they're being lured in by shiny, pretty things. There's a lot of misconceptions of modern sales and marketing. And if I had a whiteboard behind me, I'd draw a couple of funnels and show you the transformation of marketing qualified leads. And it used to be, I don't know if you know what the percentage split of marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads. I'll see if I can dig out some data on that, because normally I just whiteboard it and look at chunks. But it used to be you did this much from a marketing perspective and this much from a sales perspective. Well, that's flipped, because now it's all about actually there's much more in the marketing, but there's still a part of the sales, and the sales hasn't necessarily got smaller. It's just the market has, with the acceleration of social media, with the access of data, and now with things like chat, marketing hasn't necessarily become dominant. It's just there's just much more accessibility to tailorized marketing, where beforehand we had 3 channels, and one of them didn't advertise, or 2 of them didn't advertise, and one of them did. So it was a much more broad campaign, where now you can get really specialized. And I think that for me is one thing that I see a lot of that opportunity cost, and they're not spending it wisely, because they're being lured into, you do this campaign and you'll get so many followers, or you get so much of this or so much of that. And Audrey, who's a partner in the business, and also my wife, she talks about it very much about quality marketing creates presence at your doorstep, and that's your marketing qualified leads, your MQLs. But sales impact is where you open the door, you pick up the parcel, and you bring it in. I'll quite often use a beer bottle to talk about, there's really good sales and marketing out there, but it's like a shiny chilled beer bottle. But without a bottle opener, you're going to break your teeth trying to get into that, or you're going to damage your table, whatever it is. You need that thing that enables access to a cold, clear, refreshing beverage. And that for me is part of, I think, probably that misconception. Yeah, we can do it all with an ad campaign, or we can do something on Facebook, or we can do something, and it's great. These things are great, but are they actually then going to transfer into revenue, transfer into sales? Because when the customers come in, and I do some sales audits with web designers, where we help them calibrate what the traffic and conversion process pre the website transformation, because a lot of web developers do great work, increase flow, traffic, and engagement, and then the companies don't maximize it because they don't know how to get the presence in the door. And because we've done the pre-audit, we do a post-audit and go, okay, so your engagement's now here, the conversations are now here. You've got all your MQLs are working beautifully. Now, what's your sales enablement strategy to transfer that into revenue? And then at that point, I become what's the word I want to use? I want to say partner, it's not the right word. Yeah, that's where the maximization of what I do comes in as a sales director, because it's all about conversion, and then cash flow. So it's not just getting the order, but it's getting the order paid for in the bank, and then let's do it all over again and bring it back around again. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What do you see as the tip of the big mistake that the smaller SMEs are making?
Yeah, I think totally agree with everything you say, and really just forgetting that we're dealing with people. I see so many people in the SME space trying to hide behind Facebook ads, trying to, got a new website, brilliant. That's all my sales and marketing sorted. Come on, customers, leads. Oh, nothing's happening. What's going on? I think.
I had a chap that I had 2 or 3 one-to-ones with, and then he came and he shared something, and you could see he was a bit like, I don't want to tell you this. It's like, what's going on? I engaged somebody to do some cold calling for me, and as soon as he said it, I was like, oh no. It's like going to Spain and trying to buy a house and not knowing anything to do with the Spanish system or Spanish law or any of that. And he spent the best part of $4,500 and got nothing back. And I then, as he was going through it, I went, "Did you get any data? Did they clean your data for you?" And he went, "What do you mean?" Well, if they called somebody and it was the wrong name, did they get the right name and then give you the updated sheet with the purged data? No, they just did some calls, and it's like, and I think that for me is part of the sales, the old school sales. There are guys out there selling those kind of services to companies that are desperate for more customers, and they're willing to part with really precious cash. And it breaks my heart, because what I said to this guy was, I said, look, if you're ever feeling inclined to do that again, can you promise me one thing, that you'll come to me first, we'll do it in £500 bites, and I'll write your scripts, because I can do that for you, as from an engagement perspective. I'll help, because then at least if they do call, because I don't even think these guys were calling, but we're doing it in bite-sized chunks, and then we can review what the quality was like, what the interactions were like, what did the guys who are making the calls come across? Was it impactful? Was it not impactful? Why were they saying no? What was the reasons for you? Go back to your guy asking for the 50 quid. It's like, but they said no. Why did they say no? What wasn't working right? And can I listen to some of the calls? I want to hear what was going on. And if they're not going to give you access to be able to generate the corrective scripts or work with them on it, if they're not going to let you listen to the calls that they're going to make, then I wouldn't be investing your money in them, because it sounds to me that they don't want that level of accountability. But you've only then risked 500 quid rather than putting 4,500 down, 4,000 down, and having nothing back from that. And also, that's what I do, right? I write those campaigns, I manage those campaigns, and I hold them to account. And I've done it for multiple companies within multiple different sectors. So it's a bit like going to Spain. I speak Spanish. I know how the legal system works, and I know how to buy houses. The question is, where do you want to live, and how much do you want to spend? I'll go and set you up with a lovely villa by a beach, or by a golf course, or by whatever, and make sure that you're comfortable. As several countries I would love to go and buy property in, but I don't know where to start, other than I need to find a friend who's native from that country, who I can know, like, and trust, who can take me in there.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy.
One of the things I don't particularly like, and I understand the process, but I'm not great on people trying to sell me in the DMs, and I'm especially dislike when they come in and they want to make friends with you. Just seen your profile and you look really interesting and I'd like to make friends with you. You think, no, because in 10 messages time or 3 messages time, or usually the next message, you're going to try and sell me something. or the people that message you, again, it's the lack of homework, where we get messages, I was looking at your website, it was really good, but it could do with this, that, and the next thing. And I'm thinking, you've got the wrong audience. So those are the things that I think really bug me with sales now. And it's the tactics. It's the, like, because when you've done all these sales courses, I've done many, and you do the courses and they tell you what to do, and then all of a sudden you're seeing all the tactics, and it's it just doesn't feel great. People need to want what you are selling, and you need to show them how it's going to help them, and so that they almost come to you, so you're not having to do that stuff. What do you think about selling in the DMs?
I think that's really interesting. So I've got two takes on it. So my first take is, and a shout out to Richard McCann. I don't know if you know Richard McCann, but he's worth following on LinkedIn if you don't know him. And I saw a post he put up probably about 18 months ago, and it was on this very thing. It was about people reaching out and overselling to you, and he flipped it around and went straight for an engagement and asked the person for, it was an indecent proposal, so he asked for marriage. Now, I'm married at the moment, and would like to stay that way. So I'm not keen to ask for somebody's hand in marriage. But if I get an overly assertive, a direct message wanting to sell to me, typically it's people wanting to sell marketing campaigns to grow conversions using emails, but they're using a direct message on LinkedIn. I don't understand why that is, because if you want to get me, do me through email, don't do me through DMs. It's a bit of a no-brainer. But if I get one of those, and again, credit to Richard for the genesis of this. The first thing I do is I send a message going, I cannot believe the timing, and I am so glad I've got an opportunity to spend some time with you. This Saturday, I've arranged 3 viewings. I look at where they live in the world, go to Rightmove, and I put 3 links in for houses. We're due to be at this one at 1 o'clock, this one at 3 o'clock, and this one at 4, and then we'll go to this restaurant afterwards to discuss what house we're going to buy. I am so looking forward to having you as my flatmate or roommate or house buddy or whatever it is. Now, if those houses don't work, then find me a house and we'll go and see that one together. Your future roommate, Campbell. And it's interesting because it's such an indecent thing to ask somebody to buy a house, but it's the same thing from a sales perspective. It's like, how very dare you come and throw your products and services at me and product dump? Chances are your product is amazing, but at the moment, I don't know who you are. I don't know if I need it. I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if I want it. And what I also know is my LinkedIn inbox is full of my correspondence with people that are important to me, and people that I'm building a relationship with, and people that I meet on LinkedIn at events and are part of my LinkedIn community. And I don't want that cluttered with, because the one thing that, shout out to LinkedIn, you've got Microsoft Blood run for you guys. Get some of Outlook and apply it to the LinkedIn inbox, because it's a mess. But that's my first response. The other side of the coin, I spend a lot of time educating my audience and working with second degree connections. We do workshops on social selling, and I've created and honed from what used to be an old school LinkedIn methodology to now what I do from my own biz dev for SalesGeek, but also for what I do as far as with the companies that I work with. That I got a message from somebody, and he more or less asked me to buy a house with him. And I looked at his profile, looked at his company, and I went, right, that's fine. Everything fitted the brand, his culture, his geekiness was really resonated with me. So I went straight to, that's a great idea, and it was about setting up a community of sales like-minded people in the East Midlands. Because he put out there and said, we don't think there's a platform quite like this. I think we should come together and do it. Now, that wasn't a pushy sales thing, but I didn't go into the thing where it's like, I don't know you from Adam. Why are you asking me to go and put my name and my brand against something? But he then came 3 messages later and went, I did that thing where I just went straight to the question. But the reason he did that was, over the last 6 months, he has been educated as part of my audience on who I am, what I do, and how I resonate with my tribe. And as that, it's a bit like when you meet a celebrity on the high street and you go, I really know you. No, you don't. You know the character they represent, the character they portray. So the flip side of it is generally that sometimes people can get to know you really well. Therefore, there's an over-familiarization to the fact that actually their products and services are not relevant to what you're doing. So that it's an interesting evolution as it goes, because I view LinkedIn as a kind of like as a stage, and everything that I do has to entertain and engage, and sometimes inform. So I will put stuff about products because it's part of the, but it's not just all about, here I've got this to sell to you, and oh, by the way, here's one of these to sell you, and this is really cool as well. But it's more about the challenges of having good beverage holders, and then all of a sudden I'm talking about the things that sell the whole and not the drill stuff. But yeah, I feel your pain. Unsolicited direct messaging for products and services, that especially when there's no applied logic to it. It's that old, yeah, I do email campaigns, but I'm going to communicate to you on LinkedIn
or the brilliant Facebook ad advertising a course where you'll never need a Facebook ad again.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, brilliant.
Seen loads of those.
Yeah.
You've mentioned across the time about wanting to be a wingman for salespeople and finding someone who can put up with you. And you mentioned her briefly, your lovely wife, Audrey, who is brilliant. So SalesGeek Midlands is a little bit of a family affair too. So a bit like me and Matt working together, you work with your wife. And tell us who leads in that relationship, Campbell.
I think it's it's a 50-50. I think for me, one of the big challenges, especially from a husband and wife perspective, is being able to continue to remember that everybody needs room to breathe. And sometimes, and it's interesting. I was take my glasses off because as I take a veil off and open up. I was losing my rag in a car park a couple of weeks ago. Somebody had been in my boot, pulled everything out, and this Audrey and the kids are in the front of the car, and I'm talking about this mess in the boot of the car. It wasn't anything too particular. It was just that it hadn't been put back quite the way it needed to. And then somebody turned around in the middle of the car park and went, "You're right, Campbell." And then it was like, oh, I'm in public and I need my game face on. And it's that difference between like home office and being at home and having that ability to manage. I can't remember what the 1980s song is. We hurt the ones we love, and it's because we allow ourselves much more freedom because we've got security and trust, and we don't take that and hold it preciously. We take it and hold it for granted, and therefore the flippant comment is something that I would say is probably one of my challenges, is to be mindful of the ability for everybody to breathe. And it goes back to, we talked to this a bit earlier before I came on the podcast. As a business, we are changing some of the accessibility. So at the moment, you can go to my LinkedIn profile and you can book an appointment with me if you want. That's going to change moving forward, because actually my time is becoming more finite as the business grows. Therefore, my access, though there will still be access to me, is going to look like and feel like much more a commercial sales director, because my time is finite. And my one-to-ones, even though I'm doing a lot of talking just now, they're going to be capped at 20 minutes because it can't continue running into an hour plus. And one of the reasons for doing that is because of I am able to operate at one speed, but actually the people that I depend on have got other things to do, as well as try and keep up with me, as well as try and keep up with their own stuff. Therefore, that blend of just being able to be patient and to help. And also, it's the curse of dyslexia, or from my version of dyslexia, is I don't know why you don't get it, because I get it. So why do you not get it? And it's that's if you're a linear thinker, it's because I don't see the end You need to take me to the end, take me through the stages. And I was like, but I see it all, so why can't you see it all? But yeah, I think Chris Evans said something really says lots of interesting things from an empowerment and a mindset perspective. But one thing he said was, keep your anger for strangers and leave it at the door. So when you come in after a bad day, don't bring that bad day with you into the house, because you're coming into the place where you should be filled with the people you like the most. But when you're working in a home office, it's really difficult to keep that in that room, open the door, and then come into the living room and be, that's the upside downside of having a home office and working from a family perspective. But the hours are great, the rate of pay is fantastic, it's I think something that if you're not prepared for some of those things, especially if you're coming straight into working with your wife or working with your husband, and you're thinking about setting up a business, it's worth spending a bit of time just being considered about ensuring you still like each other at the end of the day, because that's quite important. Regardless if you agree with each other or not, she's still, Audrey's still the most amazing person, and the person that I chose to spend the majority of my time with. And now she has to disagree with me, because that's part of what I need in the business, but yet that's also part of what I need as a husband and as a business partner, as a co-worker, and as a friend. So it's a blend.
She does bring you a lot of balance. She's a really lovely person. We spent quite a bit of time with Audrey too, and she is definitely the sort of yin to your yang. She's very patient, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting. When we were younger, we got cut up by a car driving on a country road, and they swerved and cut in front of me, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was more or less, I hope you run your car off the road, because that's what you deserve, you reckless person. Audrey beside me was praying that they would get home safely and not have an accident, and I think that's the balance. She has a fabulous way of looking at how I wish I could see the world sometimes.
Yeah, she does.
I most definitely would not want anybody to hurt themselves, even though they may have been a bit of a muppet. But my chimp would be wanting to take banana peels and throw them at them.
Yeah, and you guys, you've got quite a few children out there, and Austin works with you too, doesn't he? You're sort of giving him some SalesGeek training.
Yep, we're very pleased to have Austin start with us just under a year ago, and if everything goes as planned, he should be starting an apprenticeship at Nottingham Trent in the September of this year. I want to say it's digital marketing and something. I don't know what this. Can't remember what the something is, but yeah, it's that's on one hand tremendously proud to watch him turn into the adult that we had the hope of a child turning into. But then on the other hand, it's like, I am dad, and therefore I need to play that character in that role, which is sometimes difficult when dad's telling you to get into your inbox and get your emails sorted out and do this and do that. And he is turning into what is a very good salesperson, because he doesn't like CRMs, he doesn't like his emails, he doesn't like all the administration. I don't want to do that. I want to do the not the fun stuff, but the stuff that he's really, really good at. And it's like, yep, but you've got to eat the frogs, and that's
the frogs. I worked for my dad for 12 years, so I very definitely appreciate the dynamic. I mean, we worked really well together. We wouldn't have lasted 12 years if we hadn't, but there is definitely a dynamic there.
Yeah, it's. I think again, it goes back to that that ability to trust in what you've done as a parent, because we've, when I say we, I mean Audrey. We have laid a lot of the foundational blocks, and the early years, and the sacrifice of not having 5 kids comes with its own joys and its own challenges, but we always wanted to have an active family. And again, maybe going back to a little bit why SalesGeek and why what we're doing, because part of it is to have something that not like I see SalesGeek necessarily as a legacy for the children to inherit, but actually that entrepreneurial business mindset of being active within my local business community, and also having a business where if because the arrangement with Austin is he is free to go at any point, but he can't just go. He needs to go to do something, and that something has to be structured, and that could be touring around the world for 6 months and going off and doing some more international traveling and doing those kind of things. But in the meantime, apply yourself, get through your apprenticeship, get through the thing at NTU is as an apprenticeship degree course, and that in itself will be a vocational course that he will have done the practical side, and then be able to do some of the academic side, and then really enhance him. And it doesn't matter if in 5 years' time he doesn't go off and become an expert in digital marketing, but actually he's had that more holistic experience rather than leaving school, studying geography. Well, actually, I learned this week that the lowest paid profession off a degree is a media student from Hull University. Don't know if that statistic is correct or not. I don't on a reel, so I will put in a caveat. But yeah, that's a lot of time potentially wasted in trying to achieve a non-vocational study course that might not get you what you want. So yeah, I'm very proud of Austin and his commitment to helping the family business grow, because ultimately it's we do it for them, and we do it to give them a position to be able to maybe have some inheritance one day if they're lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're on the subject of being a dad, I couldn't help notice when we were doing a bit of research for this episode and we were trawling through your LinkedIn profile, you advertise yourself as a bit of an expert in the dad joke. So the Leading Boldly podcast is your platform today, Campbell. Give us your best one.
Okay, this is dedicated to Fiona, and she shared this with me a long time ago. What kind of biscuit can fly?
I don't know.
A plain biscuit. Definitely
scores high on the dad joke scale. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a safe one to pull out the packet. I think I'm currently beginning. I've got the beginnings of writing not a sales book, but probably more of a mindset manual for sales and sales resilience. But chapter 1 is happiness, and it's about really looking at how to build in thankfulness and being grateful and starting at a point of that. And I think one of the things for me is the ability to laugh at things and yourself, and that sometimes the nonsense and the stupidness of life or the stress of life needs a bit of reflection. And yeah, I what's brown and sticky, a stick. It helps me as well with some of the stuff I do as a club leader, because if you can think and act like a 10-year-old, you get on quite well when you're doing that. But also, it just helps you look on the bright side of life sometimes.
Absolutely. So we've reached the point of the show, Campbell, where I get to do my Desert Island Discs bit. It's the closest I'm ever going to get to being on Radio 4. So we'd love to know your favourite book, your favourite piece of music, and your favourite tool that you would recommend to our listeners and viewers.
Okay, so I think my favorite book would be a series of books by Robert Jordan, which is The Wheel of Time. So you may have seen some of it on Amazon because they've adapted it for television. But it's I do a lot of listening in cars, and one of the reasons that I was attracted to it was they're 30 to 40 hour long tomes, so they just good value for money from Audible. You know, my $7.99 went far that month, but fell in love with the story and the characters, but also so did my children, and the boys have spent a lot of time living and sharing the experiences with me. So it's a personal reflection, I think, probably in the last 10 years, that those books, and it's interesting, I don't know if you have this experience, if you listen to audiobooks. I do in the car, and when I rehear a piece of a particular book, it will take me right back to the moment when we drove, where we were and what we were doing and what life was like. So there's probably a good nostalgia within The Wheel of Time for me, and it's also a really good story. From a music perspective, Counting Crows, and from the album, I think it's Desert Life, and it's Mrs. Potter. And there was a particular moment where it's almost probably like a bit of a coming of age. So 2.5 years ago, my eldest son turned around and said, "Dad, I've got some tickets for your birthday," and he took me to go and see Counting Crows. Now, Counting Crows have been laced throughout my life, and I've only ever bought one album. I've never gone to see them, but it would be very much a band that I would connect with, and to have my 19-year-old kid take me to go and see Counting Crows for my birthday a couple of Octobers ago was kind of a real pivotal moment in the fact that, one, I was able to share this experience with him, and I've done a good job on him and his music tastes for what influence I've had on him. But also two, I don't know how much of the Crows you listen to, but it's really insightful to understand the role that Maria has in my life, as well as the role of Maria in the songs that they sing about and is in there. So Mrs. Potter would be a song that is a multitude of emotions and mixtures. And then from a framework or something to take with me, a clean whiteboard with some whiteboard pens that work. Imposter syndrome, I tend not to have it too badly, except for if I turn around and go, right, you're going into a meeting and here's a whiteboard, what are you going to do with it? And it's like, I might have scribbles down of different frameworks, or, I'll do some stuff with, long pestle, and I'll try and get all that. So actually, when I look back on every office that I've had, I can take, if you were with me just now, we could go to the kitchen. And on the kitchen doors, the cabinets are spider diagrams of network strategy. So I whiteboard prolifically. So if I was on a desert island, I would like some whiteboards to do them.
Don't take Matt on your desert island, because you'll be fighting over the whiteboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm exactly the same.
He was so chuffed when he heard that answer.
It's a good. Wait, I have a book in me. I've just had several books in me, but one of my books is 101 whiteboards I've never written, and it's just 101 blank pages with a picture of a whiteboard. All your books.
Amazing, love it.
You shouldn't have told the world about that. That's going to be out there. Get it done this week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. I love it. So you go in and work with companies. What sort of companies are you looking to work with?
At the moment, I've got a real passion for working with pre-startups. Got a real passion working with pre-startups in medtech. I've spent quite a bit of time working in that space, and I really like companies and products that make the quality of life better. And from a personal perspective, that resonates strongly. And manufacturers, typically manufacturers that are legacy businesses that have maybe into their second or third generation, and they're not too sure where to go. So and as a husband and wife team, we, Audrey and I do mentorships with other husband and wife businesses to help them, or businesses where you've got fathers and sons, and we're looking at succession planning. And especially within manufacturing, is somewhere where I have a lot of experience, but also I get a lot of reward out of helping families in that position either safeguard the inheritance, or typically what happens is the father has spent a lifetime creating a business that he then can't let go of, and because he can't let go of it, the next generation becomes jaded. And then therefore the strife and disharmony in the business then becomes fragmented, and what could have been isn't. Whatever that could have been is. Now that might be a management buyout, or that might be reinvestment, or that might be whatever. What I find really rewarding is where you take the onion of that and you peel off 1 layer, 2 layers, and 3 layers, and then all of a sudden you get to right down to the nub of, this is the problem, and if I can solve this problem, I can enable the sale of this company or the investment in this company. And we've talked a lot about what a fractional time sales director does. The other side of what I do is I work with companies to scale and sell, and it's not every company needs to be sold, but I like to give the ability for choice and the best value of what that if dad or mum have spent 20, 30 years sacrificing, and the next generation maybe doesn't quite understand that, then I hope the little I can do to help, that traverse is to be able to come in and hold hands and butt heads and do all the stuff that we need to do to be brave and be kind and do that. So yeah, they're pre-startups, startups, medtech, and manufacturers.
Right, amazing. And you run a sales club in Leicester every month where you
Every month
do sales training.
It's networking. We come together. You mentioned it, I think, in the introduction. It's held at Peter Pizzeria. Typically, the last Thursday of the month, we take a break for 2 months over the summer. But I am excited to announce that in partnership with Rutland County Council, we'll be running a sales club with them, or sales training workshops. It's a bit more of a full-fat version than what we do at Peter Pizzeria on the 13th of this month. And that's it's in conjunction with Rutland, so it's for the Rutland business community. So that's quite an exciting collaboration. Quite pleased that we've managed to get that off the ground.
Great, that's amazing. Yeah, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. And where can people connect with you? LinkedIn.
If you're corporate and you want to stay middle of the road, LinkedIn. If you want to be a bit edgy, you can find me on TikTok. I think I'm down as your sales trainer on TikTok. You'll find me there. We also do a little bit on Insta and on Facebook. But yeah, my two primary platforms, very much LinkedIn, and also it's not edgy stuff on TikTok. It's just you got to have a lot of dopamine to ride the TikTok algorithm. It's hard work.
Yeah, well, it'll all go in the show notes. And thank you very much, Campbell. As I anticipated, you made our job incredibly easy today. And I think it's been a really valuable conversation for the listeners as well.
Well, there's some material there that's of use and of insight.
There definitely is. It's going to be a long episode, but that's good.
Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate the opportunity to come and talk.
Quick one before you go. If you want to grab a free PDF download copy of my new book, Being Bold, How to Use Brand and Human Transformation to Skyrocket Your Growth, just drop into the show notes where I'll put a link to your free copy.